Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Kansas City-born, New York City-native veteran jazz trumpeter Dave Scott. He talks about his upcoming July 2022 gigs in Kansas City. As the world begins to open up, COVID restrictions are eased, and the fans get what they've been waiting for, which is live music. Dave Scott is ready as he heads back home for some July shows. He opens up about that, life lately, and the future. He's a good friend of the show, and we are always delighted to check in to see what's going on, and there's a lot. Thanks for listening.
Dave Scott, how are you, sir?
Okay, how you doing, man?
Everything's good, man. So thanks for reaching out. It's good you're coming back to Kansas City. It's great to catch up with you. So I guess my question, first and foremost is, how have you been doing? So you've been teaching. Have you been doing any gigs? How have things been going for you lately?
Well, I did a couple of things. Things are starting to, here in New York now, things are pretty much open. I did a gig. I think I talked to you or maybe not. In October, I got a grant from the City Arts Council. They were giving grants to artists, musicians for performances and shows, etc., so they could, try to get things rolling after the pandemic and help artists out. Is really a nice deal. And I got a nice grant, so I rented out a little hall over in the village at this school in the village. And I had like a CD release gig for my last two CDs that I wasn't able to do before because of the pandemic, due to the pandemic. So anyway, that was nice. So I featured both of my bands, my quintet and my violin band. And then I recently played at the 55 bar, which I play a lot, and unfortunately the 55 bar just closed after many, many years. So I was I'm glad I was able to get one more gig in there, with my quintet. That's a big drag.
Wow.
It's just the rents, man. The rents keep going up here, and the landlords are gouging people, and small businesses are closing, and, there's always, jazz clubs come and go, but the 55 bar had been there for decades, and it was a great, when I thought about them closing, I thought about all the great music that's gone down in that little room. It's just a little dive over in the village, just no food, or it's just a little bar. And, but man, a lot of people have played there over the year. Mike Stern played there. He had kind of a residency. I think he played every week. When he was in town, he'd play like pretty much every week. I had heard some great music there, and they were also more kind of open, you didn't have to, you could play avant-garde music there, and it was everything from real traditional straight-ahead jazz, even they had some blues sometimes on the weekend, some of the most, progressive experimental stuff. So it was a cool place, and it was really, really a drag to see them have to close their doors. That's the long answer, sorry. But yeah, no. I'm doing a few things, and there's some new stuff going on here in Brooklyn. There's a little club not far from me called Bar Bayou, and it's run by a bass player. And they've been having some really great bands there. And I'm hoping to get in there pretty soon. I know the guy, so he's booked pretty far ahead, but I should be able to start playing there pretty soon. So.
Well, last night we actually caught Nadujo Makatini. He was in town. Have you heard about him? He's from South Africa. He's a wonderful player, and it was a pretty avant set last night, and I was cool. Just like, it was major league jazz. Logan Richardson was actually in town playing with them, and it was something that Kansas City doesn't see that often. So when you're talking about the 55 bar and major league New York jazz, we got that last night, so it's so good to see the cats are coming in from out of town. Yeah, so it was good just to kind of see that happening all the way around.
And where'd you see them?
They were down at the Blue Room.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So
man, the Blue Room is Gerald's. He's really open. It's been a few years ago, but a couple of times I brought my quintet out from New York, and we were playing more open, avant-garde kind of stuff, and both times we had great crowds. So yeah. I remember one was on a Monday night, and and the place was packed, and you could hear a pin drop when we were playing. It's great, you know.
Yeah, it was a pretty good room last night. They split it up into a few shows, and it was good. But they have this new series they started over the pandemic there called Jazz at Noon, and it was a remote session, and people tuned in. Now they've turned into a live thing, so you can come in for an hour at noon on Thursday, and they have different musicians, local and
oh, that's cool.
all kinds of cats. Yeah, so I've been dipping into there, and it's been wonderful. So they've been very active, been very good about keeping this live jazz going. So
well, Gerald. I mean, do you know Gerald? You know Gerald Dunn.
Yeah,
he books it,
absolutely.
and he's done a great job. He's got really really cool.
He's a wonderful ambassador for Kansas City and keeping things moving in the right direction. He's got his radio show on, and he's a great cat for sure.
Yeah, cool.
Speaking of live gigs, you're coming to Kansas City. Let's talk about that a little bit. When's that going to happen, and what's your itinerary?
Okay, so I actually have 3 gigs, and do you know Arnie Young, drummer? He's been around Kansas City for a long, long time. Anyway, so Arnie, I've known Arnie for a long time. He sent me one of his CDs. I don't know if you've familiar with his band is called his Rough Tet.
Yeah.
He has a quartet, and so he sent me one of his CDs in the mail. I was listening to it anyway. It's really cool. It's some nice avant-garde Arnie's writing, and so anyway, I just sent Arnie a message. I said, "Oh, Arnie, loved your CD, and we should try to do a gig sometime." So Arnie gets on the, he says, "I'll get right on it." So anyway, before I know it, man, he sends me a message, and I've got he's got 2 gigs lined up, right? So anyway, one of them is at the Ship on, and that's just going to be, and he actually set it up for me to do my thing there, and so and that's going to be on July 7th at the Ship. That's going to be, the personnel is going to be myself, and then Michael Eaton, who's the tenor player, who's from Kansas City. I think you've talked to Michael before, right? Interviewed him? Yeah. And he's originally from Liberty, so Kansas City area. I play with him some here in New York. He lives here in New York. He's a very good tenor player. As a matter of fact, the last gig I did at the Blue Room, he was in town and played it. So anyway, he's going to play tenor saxophone. And then Marty Morrison, my good friend, the drummer. And this young piano player who I haven't played with, but everybody speaks of highly, Andrew Wallette. And then Gerald Spades is going to be playing bass on that one. And we'll be doing some original material of mine and more avant-garde stuff, So, and I played in there once with Jeff Harshbarger's Liberation Orchestra. And I took some of my music and orchestrated it for his orchestra at the Ship. And this was a few years ago, and it was really fun. We had a great crowd. And then the other 2 gigs, we're playing at the Westport Coffee House on Sunday the 10th. And then Arnie's going to feature his band on the first set. And his Rough Tet, he calls it. And then and that starts at 6. See, and the gig on the Ship starts at 9 o'clock. But Arnie's going to have, his band's going to play first at 6. That's a Sunday night. And then I'm going to play with the band with Arnie playing drums, Jeff Harshbarger, and Michael Eaton again. And let's see, the guys in Arnie's band are John Nicholas on bass, Jacob Schwartzberg on saxophone, and Quinn Wallace on trumpet. And it's a nice band. So those 2 gigs. And then on the 11th, we're going to do that big band thing that Tim Brewer and I put together that we weren't able to do last time due to the COVID. And that's going to be at the Blue Room. And so we'll do 2 sets and starts at 7:30. And so there'll be a lot of, it's all Kansas City musicians playing. And Michael Eaton is actually going to be playing in the saxophone section on that one too. And that'll be all Tim's music and my music mostly original, some arrangements, but mostly original music of that Tim's and mine both. So that'll be a lot of fun.
I guess my follow-up to that is, there's so many musicians you mentioned that I've kind of seen, and I have seen actually over the last 6 months or so. And, from a spectator perspective, it's just good to see everyone back out there. But my question to you is, how do you see the jazz community coming back stronger? I mean, because for artists, this is kind of like a time of rehab and getting back to it and, revitalizing the scene. So how do you see musicians coming back or the community coming back stronger?
Well, I mean, jazz, first of all, the musicians who play jazz are very passionate about the music. And as well as the listeners and followers of jazz. I mean, jazz has, it's, because first of all, when you play jazz, you're not going to make a lot of money doing it, So musicians who dedicate themselves to being, good jazz artists are more concerned about making good music than they are making money. Of course, I mean, you want to be able to make some money too, of course, you got to survive and so forth. I mean, it's coming back strong here in New York. I mean, the scene is I'd say it hasn't dropped a beat, you know what I mean? And going forward, I just feel like jazz will always be there. I think it's healthy right now. I mean, the schools, where I teach at the New School, for instance, and I also teach at a college in Connecticut. Just all these young students that want to play, and the schools, Manhattan School of Music here in New York, Berkeley in Boston, William Patterson University in New Jersey, all these, now Juilliard, has a jazz program. And so there are all these great musicians that continue to play the music, and keep the tradition going. And so I just feel like the music is going to survive no matter what. Jazz is going to, it's an art form, it's like any other art form, and it's going to always survive going forward because of the passion for it. I think we're pretty much back to normal. And I know friends of mine are starting to go to Europe again and play over there a lot. So
I've noticed that when I've asked younger players, like, really young players that are just out of school and they're getting after it, I'm like, what's been kind of the mood? Have you noticed there's been less kids, less students in school? And a lot of them have said resoundingly there's more than ever. Everybody's waiting and going out there. And if there was ever a measuring stick for an art form as far as how strong it is, it'd have to be the next crop that wants to come into it. And, jazz has always been that art form that's been void of, not moving forward because of money. It moves forward because of, blood, sweat, and the spirit of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the passion. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of, I still have my room here, and it's great now because I've got the room up and running again where I have a lot of, call them jam sessions, but it's a set group of people. I'll call different people and say, hey, you want to play on this day? That's one of the beautiful things about New York is everybody wants to play. Everybody's into it for the music. But they're really more like little workshops, I'll get 5 or 6 people together, sometimes 4 people. And I have my room when I have drum sets. I have a nice piano, and people come over. Originally, we couldn't do it during COVID, but then the owner of the building said it's okay to, as long as people are vaccinated, you can start playing again. But they're like little workshops. People bring their original music. I did one yesterday when I went over to a friend's who lives close to me. Everybody brought in original music, or maybe an arrangement of something, and we just sat there and played through different music, by different people who were there for 2 or 3 hours, So, and I try to do that 2 or 3 times a week, and I play with all these great young players, and I'm continually meeting. I've been here in New York now for back this time 22 years. and I'm continually meeting new. Say, oh, we'll try. Yeah, I'll say somebody. Oh, I need a piano player for to do this. I'm going to have a session, and they say, oh, well, have you heard so and so this year? And I said, no. So it's usually somebody young, and they'll come over, and I'll say, okay, here's another great musician. And this area I live in, Brooklyn, is kind of, now it's kind of there's a little nucleus of great musicians. It's just live within a few blocks of me, so it's kind of like a little community. I mean, it always moves around. It used to be Park Slope, and then Park Slope kind of got too expensive, So now we're on the other side of the park, Prospect Park. They can call it Prospect Park South and Ditmas Park. More musicians are moving into this area now. So anyway, just a very cool thing.
Well, and that's the thing that I've noticed and heard too. Brooklyn's turning into kind of a new haven, and there's just a lot going on. So, do you have any new material in the works? A new album that's going to be coming out anytime?
Yeah, I just recorded another Steeplechase CD, and we just got done. We just finished mixing it. It's kind of funny because Nils, the owner of the label, producer, lives in Denmark. So we recorded here. We recorded at a really nice studio in New Jersey. We record, really good engineer. Nils and I kind of go back and forth. He'll mix it a little bit, and then he sends it to me for comments, and I'll say, okay, well, yeah, the piano's too loud here, or something like that, or maybe too much reverb, or whatever. He'll adjust it, and we went back and forth several times. We just recorded in February, and like I said, in this nice studio in New Jersey, and it's most of the regular guys, but some of them weren't always available. But there's such a depth of great musicians here in New York that I know and play with. So, but Rich Perry played saxophone. He's the usual, and Gary Versace, a piano player who I usually play with. And then Mark Ferber, he actually plays in my violin band. Jeff Williams, who normally plays in the quintet, he lives in London, and he couldn't get here, and so Mark did it. And then Johannes Weidenmuller, who's a great bass player, who just lives right here in the neighborhood. And he's a great musician. He plays in Kenny Werner's trio, and he's played with a lot of really great musicians. And it was all original music, and it kind of came up late. Nils contacted me and said, "Hey, could you do this date in February?" And I said, "Well, okay." And I only had a couple of months, I think, so I had to write some new music pretty quickly. And then we just got together and we played through it with the guys, and it's mostly kind of open stuff. So yeah, my music leaves a lot of, it leaves a lot of space for improvisation, and it's really built around the improvisation. The tunes themselves are kind of vehicles or springboards, so to speak, to try to get the music, get a vibe going, or I just kind of leave it up to the musicians when you have such great musicians, such stellar improvisers, the music is always interesting and goes places you don't expect. And I love that. So anyway, we recorded in February, and it should be out probably around towards the end of the year. It usually takes Nils a few months to get, he does a lot of projects, and usually takes him a few months before he gets everything finalized and then gets the CD out.
Dave, man, it's great. Before we go, I want to make sure that if anybody wants to pick up any of your music, see anything that's going on in your world that they can see up in New York and beyond, where can they get everything Dave Scott at?
All my CDs are available on iTunes. Some of you can stream on Amazon Prime, but I know you can Apple Music. You can hear some of my stuff. Sometimes there's a lot of Dave Scotts, so but you might put in specific name of the CD, or sometimes if you put in Dave Scott Quintet, you can find it. And then also, I'm in the process right now of redoing my website, so it's down right now. But once I get it up, I'll let you know. and there'll be information there. And I'll also hear some of my stuff on my SoundCloud page. So if you went to SoundCloud, put in Dave Scott Music, you should be able to hear some of the stuff, from some recent stuff and some older stuff. I put up, a couple of tracks from each CD on that.
Well, Dave, man, I'm looking forward to seeing you here in Kansas City. Have a good trip, have a good visit, and thanks for reaching out, man. It's always great to catch up.
Yeah, Joe, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for the support of the music. It's really, we couldn't do it without people like you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Dave for his time, music, and class. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz related, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. For all things Joe Domino, joedomino.com, and there you can contribute to keep this Neon Jazz going strong via Patreon or PayPal. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.